Giants. Welcome to another scary story. Today we are reading The Cave in the Mountain. Field notes. Location: the hills in Mexico. Date/time: just before sunset. Atmosphere: in unfathomable darkness, unbearably hot. I was around 10 years old when I first encountered the cave. I'm the youngest of three to Mexican American parents. In my childhood, I traveled to Mexico at least twice a year. My folks both came from a small village in the desert valley in central Mexico. During my childhood and adolescence, the village or town, whatever you like to call it, had a maximum of 300 residents. Everybody knew everybody. You get it. As a child, going from the downtown of a major Texas city to the lawless deserts of Mexico was liberating in a way. I could do whatever I wanted at any time with little apparent consequence. I discovered a lot about myself and learned to respect life and nature while hunting and working in the hills of Mexico. A popular pastime for the folks of the town was to hike up the mountain just outside of town. It took all day to reach the top, but when you did, you could enjoy a view of the entire town and the valley while the sun was setting. It was truly an enjoyable experience. While at the top of the mountain one evening, my close friend from the village, who accompanied me daily during my visit, revealed the existence of a massive cave on the other side of the mountain. I've never been on that side of the mountain. There's a cave back there? I asked. It felt odd to me, despite how many times I took a trek to the top of the mountain, that no one had ever mentioned this cave to me. Let's go, he said, not waiting for me to respond. He got from the giant boulder we were sitting on and started up over the peak of the mount. I followed right behind him. He had gotten me into some trouble before, but I had never really gotten hurt because of him. So I thought, why not? There are no trails or markers on the mountain. It took some searching, but eventually he found the cave. It was indeed a giant hole carved into the mountain, going down as far as I could see. The setting sun didn't light up more than a few yards into the tunnel before fading into pure darkness. We stood at the edge, peering down into the depths of the cave. Almost instantly, my eyes and nose started to feel like I had stuck my face in hot coals. The smell of ammonia from the bats that lived in the cave blindsided me. Meanwhile, my butt was having a good laugh at the expense of my tear ducts and nose hairs. We stared down into the giant hole for a good minute, looking around at all the bats clinging to various rock formations. I pointed at some beams of wood, or maybe they were real long tree trunks, that were placed across the cave at varying depths. What are those for? I asked. Farmers hire people to climb down here and bag bat poop to use as fertilizer. They make a lot of money. Want to take some? He asked excitedly. I declined, not wanting to go into the cave at all. But, as expected, my friend had already begun his descent. He made his way down to the first section that had sufficiently flat ground to stand on without the aid of the wooden beams. He yelled at me to follow him, and I don't quite remember how, but he convinced me to climb down into the cave. Since the beams were replaced by an intended for adults, they had a considerable distance between them. My smaller frame slipped through without issue. We both stood on the small section of level ground, trying not to breathe as the smell was burning our lungs. However, as he climbed higher up the wooden beams toward me, the dwindling sun illuminated a look of fear on his face. Come on, he said, and continued the next beam underneath us. I'm not going down there, man, I said back to him, my shaky voice bouncing off the surrounding walls. He didn't stop, though. Although he heard me, and possibly assumed I would follow him closely, he continued until the darkness engulfed him. I could hear him whistle at me from unique positions inside the cave, and eventually I didn't hear him at all. He had either stopped whistling entirely or he went so deep into the cage I couldn't hear him anymore. He had mentioned that once it got to a certain depth, the floor evened out and you could easily walk deeper into the cave. Bats started to fly out in swarms. I knew they wouldn't purposely hurt me, They were very loud and distracting. It was a struggle to remain in place as the tide of bats brushed by me. Once most of them passed, and I could, for sure, be heard, I yelled into the cave. I called to my friend. Hey man, let's go before it gets dark. I stood there waiting for a reply, but he never called back to me. I looked around, debating whether I should stay put or climb out and wait for him outside the cave. Tucked into space between the rocks and the walls of the cave, I noticed a few empty rice bags. I assumed they were used for carrying the bamboo. I also noticed what looked like to be clothes snapped on the edges of rocks on the walls lower into the cave. Shoes were left on small ledges that naturally occurred in the cave. Odd, I thought, thinking some folks found it easier to climb down while barefoot. I heard huffing coming from behind me. It was the unmistakable sound of my friend's heavy, panicked breathing. I tried my hardest to see down into the darkness, but it was no use. My friend would frequently play tricks on me, so I hesitated to believe that he was actually in some kind of trouble. The sounds of pain were getting closer, though, and the distress in his breath became apparent. When he came into view, he had a look that I initially misunderstood as anger, as if he were unhappy that I didn't follow him down. However, as he climbed higher up the wind beams toward me, the dwindling sun illuminated a look of fear on his face. He didn't stop to let me up first. He passed by me in a hurry and was out of the cave before I even made a move. I looked down once more at the darkness beneath me and saw nothing and heard nothing. I focused on balancing as I navigated through the beams until I made it out of the cave. Once I was out, I looked around for my friends so we could leave, but I didn't see him anywhere near the mouth of the cave. I yelled for him, getting ready to accept that he had probably left me behind again and was halfway down the mountain. I called one more time and scanned around until I found him in the tree line sitting next to a big rock. Hey man, let's go before it gets dark, I said again as I walked toward him. I was so relieved I wouldn't have to find my way down the mountain on my own in the dark. He just sat there, looking bewildered. I was trying to figure out what he was thinking or why he was behaving so weirdly. He started breathing heavier and heavier with each breath, and anger began to settle into his face. I backed away, knowing what he could do in this rage. He was a good guy who wouldn't hurt me or anyone that wasn't truly asking for it. But while in a blinding rage, he had once knocked his brother, who just happened to be in the line of fire, unconscious. I wasn't in the mood to get floored. He rose from the ground and made his way toward the cave, while picking up a big rock, he ended up smashing his thumb, fueling his anger further. With the rocks into his arm, he walked into the opening, lifted it up, and sent it crashing down the dark hole. The rock broke through some of the wooden beams on his way down, what caused an enormous roar of echoes that filled the surrounding air. When an intense roar of echoes started to subside, my friend looked like he was getting nervous. He gave me a look and nodded toward the trees, telling me it was time to go. Whenever we hiked up the mountains, we were running down at full speed, jumping from one boulder to another. It was our tradition. The mountain's steep faces were covered in decades of dirt and dead leaves, cushioning our landings. Dangerous, yes, but most of it too we filled our days were dangerous. We were just kids with only our imagination to entertain ourselves. When we started jumping and hopping down the mountains, my friend was covering way more ground than I was. I tried my best to keep up, but he left me behind, seemingly without even trying. He snapped down and let me catch up, though. We made it back to town in about 40 minutes. We sat in my family's living room for a while, which was no more than an open air concrete corridor with a roof made of bamboo and clay shingles. He held his hand up and showed me his thumb. It was disgusting purple, swollen lump. I need to drain the blood, he said as he blankly stared at his hand. I found him a sewing needle and headed over a can of for a few seconds. I slowly pierced the skin of his thumb with the needle, and I could see it hurt him quite a bit. He was really quiet after that. Bodies are often found in caves, whether they are victims or criminals. Bodies like Joseph Henry Loveless, who was a notorious criminal and bootlegger active in the early 20th century. His disappearance in 1916 remained a mystery until his remains were discovered in the Civil Defense Caves in Idaho, USA, decades later. His dismembered and headless body was found in two separate instances in 1979 and 1991. Despite the gruesome state, his remains were well preserved, allowing investigators to identify him. The circumstances and motive behind his brutal murder remain intriguing, making this case one of the most perplexing in Idaho's history.